all of the original members of the St. Gallen Mafia to talk about the revolution that they wanted in the Catholic Church. All of those people were named bishops and made cardinals by Cardinal Sebastian Baggio, Freemason.
And I guess right now joining us is the one and only Father Charles Murr. Good morning to you, Father.
Good morning, Joe. Good morning. Sorry,
Making
I'm
a
late.
grand entrance.
We are having, where I live, we are having a windstorm that almost could compete with the Holy Ghost. I'm telling you, it's something else. And I'm even glad. I'm glad that we even have connection. So, talking about the blessing of these unions, you and I spoke briefly about this the last time. You cannot bless sin. You know that. You just went through that beautifully. But you know what's even more devious about this whole thing?
What's that?
He's leaving it up to individual priests to do this.
Yes.
And this is one of the most cowardly acts I think that he's ever perpetrated. Because what's going to happen, Joe? I'm Father X. I have a parish in Manhattan. You come to me, a same-sex couple comes to me. They don't want counseling as to how to live a proper Catholic and Christian life. That they don't want. They want me to give them a blessing. I say I can't do that in good conscience. All of a sudden, I'm reported to the archbishop's office, and then they file a civil suit for a hate crime. This is the setup. All of us are being conned into this. There's something else too. He says he doesn't want anything to seem like a marriage. Therefore, we can have a blessing, so it doesn't give the appearance of a marriage. You know very well what's going to happen. The same-sex couple is going to show up at St. Cunegunda Parish. They're going to ask for a time for the parish. Both families are going to show up. Flowers are all over the altar. An organist is there with a choir in the background.
Yeah.
The priest is in vestments. You think the average person is going to know that that's a blessing and not a sacrament of marriage? No. Yeah, he knows what he's doing. They know what they're doing. This is really a setup, and it's disgusting.
It seems like we want the cake and eat it too approach in this synod and synodality. We want to say both. We're not going to change doctrine. We're going to keep church teaching. His Holiness has said on a number of occasions in the past that you can't bless same-sex marriage. I mean, this leaves the lay faithful to be utterly confused, but they get the opportunity to say, but we once said it was wrong. We wrote it down. It's in letters. It's in writing. We said it was wrong. And yet it's a cake and eat it too approach here. They are creating a further divide among the lay faithful, and the lay faithful are getting more and more confused. What say you, Father Charles?
I talked to a priest a Hungarian priest years ago, and I spoke to a Vietnamese priest years ago. Right after communism had come into their countries, the Hungarian told me the first thing that the communists said was, "There's freedom of religion. We're not going to close any of your churches." 6 months later, every church received a bill for back taxes.
Ooh.
Right? This year was, let's say it was $5,000 you owe this year. Well, if the parish managed to pay that, next year it was $15,000. And the year after that, $100,000. When it got so grand that nobody could pay the tax, the communist government came in and closed the church. And they said, "We didn't close your church. You did. You're guaranteed this right. You did this." This is the same game that's being played. We're not doing anything differently. Yes, you are doing everything differently. Of course you are. No, but they're saying one thing and doing another. This is what used to be called in carnival lingo, rigged.
Yeah.
Rigged.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, and as far as a lot of priests that I know are concerned, so is this synod on synodality.
But I saw this article again. It says Synod on Synodality, laywoman's speech opposing women's ordination draws big ovation. This is good news indeed. Praise be to God. Father, welcome back to the show. This lone voice here, apparently, at the Synod, pushing back against this progressive agenda, even though it's been definitively defined that you can't ordain women.
The question is ended. It's
Yeah, but
answered.
apparently not.
Period.
We're still
It's
allowed to
finished.
talk about it.
Yeah. It's 2 steps forward, 1 back, 2 steps forward, 1 back. You just keep progressing. You keep progressing, and this is what everyone has come to expect. But you know, I've got to tell you something too. You mentioned it just a while back. People are waking up to this. Lay people are waking up. I get hundreds of letters with people saying, "What's happening?" Well, they're asking what's happening because they know something is very wrong, right? I don't have the answer completely as to what's happening. There's something that happened just a couple of days ago, a few days ago, maybe a week ago. I just found out about it yesterday. You know the Jerome biblical commentary?
Of
You've
course,
heard of it?
yes. Yes. I have a copy of it on
There's
my
a new
iPad.
one out with a great introduction by, drum roll.
I don't have any drums.
Pope Francis. Pope Francis.
Oh, wow.
He wrote the introduction.
Okay. All right. And what's new?
And
What's new in the updated
he also
version?
gave the nihil obstat. He also gave the nihil obstat and the imprimatur to it. So it makes it his opinion, right? He agrees with everything that's contained. You have to read what it says about same-sex unions in the gospel and in the Old Testament. Everything has changed. Those are no longer applicable today. You have to see what else has changed. So look. Do you understand what's happening? Not do you understand? Of course you do. The word of God is being changed.
Let's talk about Baggio for a second. Something you and I have talked about in the past when you've been on. All of the St. Gallen Mafia came about because of his recommendations, and somehow they got rubber stamped and never checked. So is Baggio really to blame for the plethora of bishops who seem to be endorsing this incredible progressive agenda?
It's a long answer. There's not a simple answer, but I'll give the shortest one I can. It's called modernism, and modernism is the synthesis of all heresies. This has been going on for about 150 years, right? So it's not simply Baggio. He's the tip of the iceberg. He's the most recent. The reason that Baggio is an important figure in everything, and it's the reason that I wrote the book, is because of this. I wanted people today to understand how we got to where we are by looking back just 40 years ago to seeing what was happening and what was happening on purpose. And what I know was happening because I was very connected with the people who were investigating it, right? Baggio was accused of being a Freemason. I think the proof was given to the Pope. It was given to Cardinal Gagnon, who presented it again to the Pope. He named all of the bishops in the world. And he placed all of the archbishops in places where they were then going to be made cardinals. Right? I've explained this before. If you're named the Archbishop of New York, a year later you're a cardinal. It just comes with the territory. Well, he made all of these men, he made them cardinals because he put them in the places where they would be named cardinals. All of the original members of the St. Gallen Mafia who met secretly in St. Gallen to talk about the revolution that they wanted in the Catholic Church, which is exactly what is happening today. All of those people were named bishops, archbishops, and made cardinals by Cardinal Sebastian Baggio, Freemason.
Wow. In those days, when you called out the wolves in the sheep's clothing, the snakes in the grass at the Vatican, you had to put a tinfoil hat on. You were the crazy person. Now, I think more and more lay folk are seeing that, and they're all saying the same thing now. I think it's happening more and more. What do you say of that? Does it surprise you to see more and more average, air quotes, average Catholics having issues with this, or do you think there's still a lot of people with their head in the sand?
Yes and no. I'll tell you why yes. Because I've seen people go along to get along all my life. And I've seen people who knew better accept things for years. that they knew better than to accept. In that sense, yes. No, in another sense, Fulton J. Sheen, who I think we both love tremendously,
Amen.
talked about the age of the laity. And he said this was the age of the laity. And he said this is when the laity are going to save the church. It goes without saying, from whom? From the clergy.
Yes.
It's amazing. But I mean, we've gotten to this point. And the laity, you said it yourself, maybe they don't have degrees in theology and philosophy and what have you and all of that. They don't need it. You need a degree in common sense.
Exactly.
The only thing, as G.K. Chesterton said, the only thing about common sense was that it was not so common anymore. But right. However, just common sense will tell you something is wrong. And if you delve a little bit deeper, you can figure out what is wrong. This doesn't require a council to be called, new committees to be formed to study. We know what's wrong.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the way, we lost the faith. This is what happened. And unfortunately, we're being guided by a lot of bishops who I think, quite frankly, I don't want to say it, and I shouldn't say it, but I'm going to. I think have lost the faith also. You don't govern the way a lot of these men are governing if you have the faith. You just don't. When you had Bishop Strickland on, and I've talked with him personally too. What a difference. When you're talking to a man of God, it comes through. You know the authenticity is there. It's there. You feel it, you know it, you hear it. Many of our leaders today, we call bishops, many of them are CEOs. They're CEOs of companies, and people are waking up to that, and people are not liking that. There's a spiritual thirst and hunger in the world, and in the Catholic world there is, and people are not being fed, they're not being given to drink. That's the problem. The great problem that we have with women and men religious today. Somebody just sent me something else, that an entire congregation of nuns has closed their doors. They no longer exist. And these were a mighty teaching force. That's it. They're finished now. They actually sold their property to the diocese. And and I stopped to think. I remember talking to so many of them, and I thought they had their priorities wrong. And this goes back to what you're talking about too, when we're talking about bishop versus CEO. I remember talking to many of the sisters, and I gave retreats to them for years. Their major concern was their community. And I kept saying, no. Your major concern has to be God. God is in first place.
Yeah.
Then your community is probably in third place. I would say the church is in the second place. God, church, your community. They had it all the way. They had it upside down. Our community first. Let's take care of us. No. And of course, it didn't work. We've got the same thing. I understand that bills have to be paid. I understand that. I was a pastor of 3 different parishes. I get it. And people have to be fed. I took care of hundreds of kids who had to be fed three times a day. I understand these things. Everybody understands them. But a lot of people are only seeing that. That's all they're seeing. They're seeing that the administration, they're selling this parish to keep the other one open. Then they're conglomerating these two. There are priests who have to threaten to resign unless they can speak with their bishop. Are you kidding me? That's your purpose. Cardinal O'Connor in New York. I love this guy. Cardinal O'Connor had Wednesdays open for priests. Nobody else appeared in the rectory of the chancery, in the rectory on Madison Avenue of St. Patrick's, except priests. And if you had an appointment, you were taking care of one of the appointments. And if you didn't have an appointment, you had to wait a little bit longer. But you were seen by the cardinal. That's what he did every Wednesday. And Bridget, the housekeeper, had fresh scones and a cup of coffee for you, or tea. Right? That's what he did. That's what he did. And everybody knew him, and he knew you. After we would get done talking about a particular piece of business, I mean, you weren't there just to take up his time. You had something to say.
Yeah.
He looked right at me and said, "Now, Charles, you give your mother, Anita Jane, my love, and tell her to watch out for this, that, and the other thing," in a joke. I said, "You got to be kidding me. You remember my mother's name?" You know,
wow.
It's that kind of a thing I'm talking about. That's what's real. All right. That's what's real. Nobody hated him. Everybody loved him. Even people who didn't agree with him, priests who didn't agree with him, loved him. Because why? Because he was a father. We've lost that. And if you look at the Second Vatican Council, Joe, you will see that the Second Vatican Council precisely is calling for that relationship between the bishop and his priest to be renewed.
How many parishes have had to shutter because there's no priests? And yet the priests that are left have to threaten to quit just to get seen. You would think that the bishops would be like, I need as many priests as I can get. I can't afford to lose any of these guys now. Yeah. You know, the realities of pastoral life as a priest in some of these parishes has got to be just incredible. You know, trying not to get in trouble with the chancery, trying not to get in trouble with the parishioners. So what does he do? Yeah. He puts Karen in charge of making sure nobody gets to see him, nobody gets to confront him, nobody gets to ask him tough questions, and he just hides in his rectory until it's time to say mass or hear confessions. I mean, this is the state of affairs we're living in today, Father.
Yeah, it is. It's not good. It's not good in a lot of ways. But I'll tell you something too. I really truly believe this. I'm not just making this up to sound positive. I am positive on this. Everything that's happening right now, all of the confusion and this disaster of an administration that we have, a catastrophic administration in Rome presently, it's going to be ultimately for the good. A lot of good is going to come out of this. I promise you, a lot of good is going to come out of this, because things like this happened before the Council of Trent. They happened before the Council of Trent. You had a clergy before the Council of Trent. There were no seminaries. Can you imagine? If you had some men who could barely say the Our Father, the Hail Mary, and the Glory Be, and they were ordained priests. Right?
Wow.
They had no training, this and the, they were, you know, a lot of the things that the Protestants were upset about, they had right to be upset about, right? Those were all addressed in the Council of Trent. All of those concerns were addressed in the Council of Trent, and they were answered. Well, that was good. That was good. And I'm telling you, what we're going through right now, sooner or later is going to be answered, God willing. It's going to be answered, and it will be for the good. It's unfortunate that we have to live through these crummy times. What bothers me most is I was born in 1950, and I got to live through the 1950s and up to 1965 in a heavenly situation that was Catholic. It was fantastic. Catholic education was fantastic. Our parishes were fantastic. The number of priests we always had priests in our home. They were great men. The sisters, my gosh, people, it was amazing. And we were just growing, and everything was wonderful. And we were proud to be Catholics. Kennedy was elected. Oh my gosh, it was a whole boost to our morale. All of a sudden, we went down from there. And I say to God every once in a while in prayer, when I'm feeling sorry for myself, I do occasionally feel sorry for myself.
Rare.
When I do that,
rare,
I say, well, then why in the world did you give me those 15 years of bliss?
Yeah.
I would have been better to have been born after that and just know the misery. But you let me see the glory, and then you took it all away. Anyway,
oh man,
he didn't do that. We did it. But it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate to have that and say, I know what it could be. It was that way. Was it perfect? No, I'm not that naive. I'm sure there were problems. I'll tell you one thing, though, Joe. I didn't see them. If they were there, nobody saw them.
Wow.
Right? But things went on, and you were proud to be a Catholic, and people
Yeah.
knew their faith. There
Yes.
was here's another thing too. My parents were the last generation to have children by faith.
Really?
Yes. Then contraceptives came in. This came in, family planning. Blah, blah, blah. My parents had children by faith.
Wow.
Every one of my brothers and sisters who came after me were a gift from God. God wanted that. God wanted that
Yeah.
person. And that person was invited into our family as a gift from God. My parents were the last generation to have children by faith.
That's amazing.
My father, not often, but he did it, that I remember quite a few times. Sitting around dinner table, we always had dinner together. It was like a religious experience supper. You had to be there, and you were there, and that's where you learned an awful lot about manners, about how to speak, about what to say, about opinions. Our parents never spoke down to us. We were to speak up, right? But I remember my father on many occasions thanking all of us for existing because we were the success behind his business.
Oh, wow.
If he didn't have us, if he didn't know that all of us were waiting at home to be taken care of, fed, sheltered, clothed, educated, he wouldn't have to work as hard. He wouldn't have had to extend himself so. He wouldn't have had to use his brain more to get business going and everything else. We were the key to his success. Do you know how important that made us feel? We were the key to our father's success. We were the key to our mother's success. It was a fantastic, different thing. The world has changed an awful lot. I'm sorry for going down memory lane, but I'm just amazed at how the world has changed.
I love it. And, it kind of does remind me, though, of the importance of families, especially in times like we're in, because, and I've said this when I give talks at men's conferences, I will often say a phrase that, the power God has given to the father. It just reminds us of the current state of affairs, that fathers, whether it be the Papa in white in Rome, or the bishop, or the priest at our parish, or just, the dads in the house, we can make or break those families. And the result is, even in spite of it all, we have to persevere. And I want to circle us back here to sort of the main conversation we started out with is, are we prepared for schism? I'm as you were talking earlier, I was thinking about St. Ignatius of Antioch. When they exiled St. Ignatius of Antioch, it was a pagan pig merchant. And then, of course, they made him the bishop. The lay faithful knew at that point that they couldn't listen to that guy. They knew he wasn't legit. They knew that this was a scam. This was a fraud. This was not good. So they simply ignored him and continued to listen to their authentic bishop, who was hiding in the catacombs or the monasteries in the deserts, running for his life, writing letters and sending them back to the faithful. I think we're going to be in a similar situation, but this is going to cause the greatest schism within the church, within our parishes and our families.
I have hundreds of letters every week from people all over the world asking different questions but the questions are based on this, on the confusion, the schism about to come. What do we do? And I tell everybody, keep educating yourself. Know your faith. Know your faith. Know your faith. Learn it. Know it. The thing is this: I am never going to leave the Catholic Church, nor are you, Joe. And most of the people that I know, as a matter of fact, I would say everybody I know, is not planning on leaving the Catholic Church. That we're not going anywhere.
Right.
So the people who are proposing anti-Catholic doctrine are the ones who are going to be gone with the schism. They are the ones on the way out. We're staying right where we are. We are going to continue to be Catholic. And people, when they know that, they're more confident. But also, knowing your faith, you've got to know your faith. The Protestant argument that I remember hearing, we had a couple Protestant relatives They snuck in there through marriages. They were called mixed marriages. I'll never forget Sister Rosalima, Sister Wilberta in second grade asking anybody, did anyone come from a mixed marriage? She's asking this to second graders. I put up my hand, yes. I said, my mother was a woman, my father was a man. That's what I thought was a mixed marriage. I swear that's true. Anyway, we had a couple relatives from mixed marriages who would every once in a while shoot little darts, little anti-Catholic darts, during conversation. And one of them was always, were usually about the Pope. We would do anything that the Pope said. We'd do anything. We'd jump off a cliff for the Pope. If the Pope told us to do this, that, and the other thing. There was a great movie that I liked anyway, with Robert Preston, who was one of my favorite actors, called Dark at the Top of the Stairs. If you haven't seen it, you really should. And the Eve Arden, our Miss Brooks, was this very anti-Catholic, bigoted aunt who came to visit, and she said, "I have it on good word from my neighbor who knows a Catholic mailman," or something like that. that the Knights of Columbus have all of the Catholic church basements full of swords and of ammunition, and they're just waiting for the word from the Pope.
That's right.
To take over the world. See, right? Well, this is what a lot of people were raised on. But the point was, their point was, we would do anything that the Pope said. Well, any Catholic educated knows that that's not the truth. However, I'm surprised how many didn't know that, and how many are really upset about this man taking people off the course. That doesn't bother me. It aggravates me. It angers me, because I know what it's doing to people who don't have the education that I have. Remember to Vatican I, First Vatican Council, when they were talking about papal infallibility.
Right.
The cardinal who opposed it was John Henry Newman.
Yes.
Protestant who became a Catholic and then was made a cardinal. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant man. He was opposed to the dogma on infallibility of the Pope. And he said, not because I don't believe in the Pope's infallibility. That's not it at all. He said, I do believe in it. He said, what I don't want to do is give everyone the idea throughout the world and in the Catholic world that every single thing that the Pope says or thinks is truth come from God. That's what I'm worried about. And that's exactly what has happened. And it's a good thing that we're waking up to that. That's good too, that we're waking up to that reality, right?
Amen.
We also got we got a question from Troy Lockett here. Can you ask if Father Murr sees it getting better at the next conclave?
You know what? Your guess is as good as mine. Look, the only thing that I can tell you is this. Learn your faith, know your faith, hold on to it. I hope so. I hope it gets better. Look, a lot of times in our history, we thought things were doomed. And especially the next pope, they thought the next pope it was going to be doomed because the College of Cardinals was so corrupt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in some cases, it produced great saints. And in some cases, it produced men who did a flip-flop.
Yeah.
I remember Pius IX. Pius IX.
My favorite example.
He was elected as a liberal, a great liberal. And the Freemasons applauded his election. Well, it didn't take him too long to learn his lesson. He did an about face, and when he did, the world changed. The Catholic world changed with him. So, I mean, things can happen. Things can happen. We must never say no. Look, when Pius X was elected Pope, the first man who was elected Pope days before him was Cardinal Rombali. Now, Cardinal Rombali was a Freemason. And the emperor, the Habsburg emperor of the Austro-Hungarian kingdom, vetoed it. He had that power to. Mm-hmm. He prevented a known Freemason from becoming pope. The election took place again after they had elected him and disqualified him, and Pius X was elected. And he was one of the greatest saints that we've ever had in the modern church. wrote against modernism, defined it, fought it for it, and was the first one to really wake us up to the dangers that we're living today. Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, God's got a few tricks up his sleeve.
All right. So then there was a question by Murr.
Yes, after this chastisement has passed and the church is reinvigorated, what measures can or should the church put into effect to prevent communist ideology from infecting it again?
I'll tell you what. As I mentioned before, the church was in a great state of chaos before that led up to the Protestant Reformation. And all of that together led up to the Council of Trent. I think all of this confusion, I really believe it, all of this confusion is going to lead up to some great, great teachings and clarity that's going to be put in place that obviously was not there because we're living it right now. We thought everything was orderly, but I guess it wasn't because we're living in chaos. Well, how did the chaos come about? Chaos came about because everything was not so established. The way things were done and the truth that was taught. There are ways around it. I think in the future, those ways around it, those loopholes are going to be closed. I think it's going to be a more compact, more understandable, and more appreciated faith and church.
Yeah, I agree too.
Mother Pasqualina told me about Pius XII. Pius XII, she was his secretary for 42 years. I said, she told me, Pius XII had the Second Vatican Council all programmed. You know, we've got this idea of John the 23rd came and opened up the windows. We're going to have a council. No, Pius XII for 5 years had a planning committee for a Second Vatican Council. Everything was put in order, but he didn't go through with it. And I asked Mother Pasqualina, why didn't he go through with the Second Vatican Council? Because I'll tell you one thing. The Second Vatican Council, a Second Vatican Council under Pius XII, Eugenio Pacelli, would have been much different than the one we had under Roncalli and Montini, believe me. So she said the Pope decided, after he had thought about it and prayed about it a lot, not to call the council. Here's the reason. He said, the bishops of the world are not sufficiently mature for it. They're not mature enough for it.
Wow.
Close
Let that
book.
sink in.
That was it. That's exactly what he said, right? The popes that we had were looking for the bishops to stand up and be bishops. This was a lot of what the council was about. Rather than listening from everything coming from Rome, you're the bishop. Be the bishop. Be the bishop. Be the man you were called to be. Well, they couldn't. This is a flop. Be the bishop. They needed this they needed the central authority of Rome. They really did. Most of them did. Right?
Did they take advantage of Pius XII in his later years because of his sickness?
Yes. It's not really taking advantage of it. We had, remember, I like to recall this to people's memory. All of our bishops until Baggio, all of our bishops were bishops until they died. So if you had the Bishop of Schenectady, 104 years old, he was still the Bishop of Schenectady.
Yeah,
now, he might have even been mentally incompetent for the last 20 years of his life.
Wow.
There were men running the chancery and everything else who kept the whole thing going, right?
Sure.
And men that hopefully he had put in place. But this was the way things were run. It was run that way. Well, all of a sudden, you don't have that. So you've got a different politics for men who wanted to come in to be a bishop. You've got less time to prepare. You've got to move things. And a lot of it is politics. You know that. A lot of things in life are politics. We're political animals. That's who we are as human beings. But yes, the things were always taken care of by other people who were more competent. And even in the case of popes, yes, we've had popes who have been not healthy. I don't think we've ever had a pope who was non compos mentis. I don't think we've ever had that. Not that I know of anyway in history. But we've had men who were stumbling and fumbling a little bit. Well, they had
Yeah.
offices around them that made everything run smoothly, right?
Mm.
And anyway, yes. But I think the
Troy
last 5 years of Pius XII's life, there was a lot of intervening and running around and doing things. Yeah.
Troy Lockett asked the question, how many people work at the Vatican? About half. About half of them.
About half.
At the Vatican.
About half.
It was a good joke, Troy. Paul asked the question, or
All
Pete
right.
rather asked the question, can Father address geographic authority and Catholics practicing church shopping? So I'm not sure what geographic authority specifically means, but church shopping for sure. Is it okay for Catholics to I guess I would be guilty of this. I skip about 4 or 5 churches on my drive to the parish that I go
Yes.
to.
I understand the problem and the question and also the answer. I think it's a good answer. When you were born, where you were born determined your parish. And when you got married, the parish your wife belonged to determined where you were going to be married. Where you moved determined what parish you were in. There were boundaries. Well, things got so crazy with liturgical nonsense. This is where I get a little bit frustrated with John Paul II.
Yeah.
Because he could have done so much more. He could have done so much more. But when all of the liturgical nonsense started happening, rather than control that and say stop, what he did was he said, all right, you can now choose your parish. So if you want to go past 4 parishes to get to the 5th parish that you like best, you can do that, and that's your parish. This is a new thing. I think it's about 25 years old, but it never existed before. There were territories, and you were held to that territory. Now you can decide on your own. Well, that's wonderful, but look at the chaos it permits to happen in the other 4 parishes you have to go past to get to the 5th one, right?
You know,
That's the problem.
This reminds me of the real one of the underlying issues at Traditionis Custodes, right? Like if I had been planning this, if I was on that team and I wanted to suppress the traditional Latin Mass, or I wasn't happy that it was spreading or whatever, I think I would have, from a strategic standpoint, if I would have done the opposite, I would have mandated that every suburban parish priest had to say at least one traditional Latin Mass every single Sunday. I would have mandated it. And the reason why I would have done that, because if my strategy was to control and take people away from these traditional communities that I didn't like, I would have forced them into my suburban parishes, filling my parking lots and my offering basket every single Sunday. And then, of course, we all know that a traditional Latin Mass can be said equally as horrible. The fact that they took them out of the parish, I think it was to their fault. This is gonna backfire on them. All you're doing is filling the parking lots and the offering baskets of these traditional Latin Mass communities. You're growing them leaps and bounds, like ours is busting at the seams. Inherently, there's a lot of Catholics, most Catholics, I argue, they would much rather just go 5 minutes down the road to the local parish rather than have to drive an hour to go to that traditional Latin Mass community.
Well, yes and no, because I think the traditional Latin Mass community is itself growing. You have to remember something, and I'm telling you the truth, and I'm telling you this as a priest. I believe this as a priest. From the time I turned 18, Latin Masses were forbidden. Now, when I say they were forbidden, I mean that if you went to a Latin Mass, you were committing a sin. We were told this, and we believed this. It was sinful, and don't let anybody kid you that they didn't tell you that. It was a sin, right?
Wow.
Now, just a minute. We had to put up with all the garbage that came, clown masses and balloon masses and jumping upside down, up and inside out masses and polka masses and all of this garbage. But we couldn't go to the Latin Mass. Now, let's bring this up to date. This is how much the enemy detests the Latin Mass. This is how much the enemy detests the Latin Mass. A few days ago, it was brought to the Vatican's attention. I think they okayed it, or they're in the process of okaying it. We have a new rite, a pagan rite of Mass in the south of Mexico, in San Cristobal de las Casas.
Oof.
And it is a Mayan rite of Mass. Now listen to this, because I'm not making this up. Yeah, I can't make this up. You can't make this up. The whole thing is bizarre. You've got ordained deacons and their wives are the ones who run the show, kind of thing. And animal sacrifice. Chickens and pigeons are sacrificed during this thing, and their blood sprinkled all. It's like voodoo. That's
insane.
Is approved. That is approved.
Insane.
But don't you dare go to a Latin Mass. Don't you dare go to a Latin Mass.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'll call you on that one, Father, and I'll meet you, and I'm going to raise that pot a stake one more. How about the neo-catechumen away? The neo-catechumen away. Have they been suppressed? I'm just curious. I mean, Benedict XVI didn't like their private little quirky little weird masses that they had. They refused to go to the Novus Ordo. The Novus Ordo was not good enough for the neo-catechumen away. They had to have their own little thing where they all gathered together, and the priest wasn't even considered the presider. A layperson was the presider of their little quirky little private masses. And Benedict XVI suppressed it. They're getting all kinds of favors out of this current pontificate. But guess what? The Novus Ordo is not good enough for the neo-catechumenal way. They do not want to have to be forced to go to a Novus Ordo Mass with all the other Catholics. They have to have their own little private thing. And apparently that is fine. Apparently that is okay. There are no, Summorum Pontificums coming out against them for that. They're not being suppressed now under Pope Francis. So it seems utterly bizarre and hypocritical to see that this is what's happening to traditional Catholics.
You just remind me of the specialness of the neo-catechumens.
Yeah,
they're very special Catholics. They don't go to the Novus Ordo. They're very special. You just reminded me. When we were kids at First Communion time, we would get a card to put into our wallet, and you carried it wherever you went. We had it in high school. We had it in college. It said, "I am a Catholic. In case of an emergency, call a priest."
I have one in my wallet.
That in your wallet.
Yeah. I have one right now in my wallet.
Same here.
Well, they had the joke of the Kennedys. There were a special edition that Cardinal Cushing made for the Kennedy family. It said, "I am a Kennedy. I'm a special Catholic. In case of an emergency, call a bishop."
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Oh, that's hilarious. You see Bridget Dunn recently, the SSPX bishop, saying confirmations in a Novus Ordo parish with permission from the local bishop, and from what I've been told, with permission from the Vatican as well. Again, it's like
mixed signals.
Yeah, this is my point entirely. It's like, is the SSPX in communion or schism? Depends on who you ask.
Keep them guessing. Keep them guessing.
Like, which bishop do you want to listen to? I don't know. I mean, the Vatican could clear this up in a single statement right now. I mean, the Pope, from his balcony on a Wednesday, could just get rid of all of this immediately. But no, it continues to be a mixed bag, mixed signal thing. But clearly, what does it say that they are saying confirmations with the permission of the local ordinary, and apparently the Vatican too? So, I mean, that obviously has a meaning to it. Like there's a conclusion there that we should all come to. You don't have to be a Thomistic philosopher coming out of the hallowed halls of Notre Dame in order to come to that conclusion.
I was in a parish. We had a problem with the roof. It leaked. It was going to fall in. And this first Sunday, this is a true story. First Sunday, I met with all the masses. I talked to all the masses. I said, "We have a problem with the roof. It's going to cost $50,000 to repair." I said, "Wow! But I've got good news for you. We've got the money." Oh, I heard this sigh. Oh, isn't that wonderful? I said, "Here's the problem. It's in your pockets."
That's right.
And I've got to get it out. I'm talking not to you, Joe. I'm talking to your listeners. Last week or so, you were on a campaign for raising funds. I would
Yeah.
ask people to stop and consider making a donation to this program. It's a good program. It's
Yeah,
broadcasting the truth. You've got people who are dedicated and to you getting the truth. Be generous.
Amen.
Be part of the
Thank you.
solution. Okay.
Thank you, Father.
God bless,
God-
Joe. We'll talk to you
God
next
bless
time.
you, Father. Did you like that video? It's okay. You can admit it. It's perfectly fine. Hey, we cover the big stories of our day, from inside the church to outside the church to all points in between, and we do it from a Catholic perspective. It's called A Catholic Take. It's a radio program Monday through Friday. We live stream it right here on this channel, by the way, so make sure to subscribe, like, and share. We would be very grateful to you. And don't forget, you're going to want to watch this video right here because you don't want to miss anything.